Hello, I'm Pirate Dave. Recently, I was thinking that there's not a whole lot of content creation out there for the Ghost Who Walks, the Phantom, and so I thought, well, maybe I should throw my hat in the ring and be a content creator for this character that I love so much. And where best to start than with the very first story? Obviously, what you're looking at is not a comic book from 1936, which is where the Phantom's first story was first produced, delivered in newspapers as a daily comic strip. Now, this is Frew Comics, an Australian publisher. This is specifically number 1128. Frew republishes a lot of the newspaper stories, both the dailies and the Sundays, as well as Swedish stories, as well as produces their own original stories. Every so often, they'll reprint the original, the Singh Brotherhood, daily story number one, debut of the fandom. This was for the 60th anniversary in particular, 1996. And so I thought I would just read through it a bit, cover the basic plot points so that you understand the kind of adventure that writer Lee Falk was telling in 1936 and what made this character so compelling that his even his own iconography, from the tight-fitting suit to the pupilless mask, first character to wear either of those things, to his secret cave lair. He is the prototype for the modern superhero as we've known it for almost 100 years now. We're actually 10 years off from a 100-year anniversary for this character. So let's get right into it. As said, this was a reprinting by Frew Comics. It starts out with a message from the publisher, which was Jim Shepard at the time. Frew and fandom fans will be very familiar with his name. He oversaw this publishing during a great run of just original stuff and reprints. This letter talks about even the movie, the Billy Zane movie that was coming out around the same time. It hadn't come out yet. But getting into the story itself, we start out, very first panel, February 17th, 1936. Famed young explorer Diana Palmer knocking out a man in a sparring match. This is going to be the secondary main protagonist for the next 90 years of this strip, Diana Palmer. Not to put the cart before the horse, but she is the object of affection for the Ghost Who Walks, our main character. But getting right into the story, Diana Palmer is returning to New York aboard a yacht. I'm not sure if it's her yacht specifically. I always got the impression that it was when I read this story. But it turns out the yacht is being targeted by Fats Horgan, a New York mafioso type, because it's apparently loaded with lumps of grease. And just to get that out of the way, this is going to be our MacGuffin for the story. These gangsters are after ambergris, which is a very valuable material used in perfume making. It's more valuable than gold, or it was at some point in history. I remember that as a kid being a thing. Diana Palmer, of course, being raided by the mafioso types, does not take it lightly. And you see her bringing back to that first panel, just knocking that dude out. But unfortunately, Diana is overwhelmed. She doesn't have a gang herself. Thankfully, it turns out that a mysterious man is on the heels of the mafioso types. And Fats Horgan, I always call him Morgan, knows exactly who he is. He is the Phantom. As you can see, this is the first time I think we see the Phantom in total, and Horgan gets the prestige of being able to name him. And of course, the Phantom saves Diana. This is a nice little interesting thing. This first clear image of the Phantom, we see that he's actually wearing some gloves. Lee Falk was still designing all the little details and elements for the Phantom as he was writing the story, so it's entirely possible to believe that he did intend for the Phantom to have gloves. Of course, classically, the Phantom doesn't have gloves. In fact, he has rings on his hand, which would be very inconvenient with gloves. Thankfully, the gloves actually come into play for this story. You might have seen it on the page there. I won't get into it too much just now. But jumping ahead, we actually see the first time that Phantom leaves his mark. As I said, the Phantom has two rings, the most notorious being the Ring of Evil, the skull shaped ring, which he leaves on the marks of his enemies so that all may know that they ran in with the Phantom and that they are criminals. And of course, the Phantom saves Diana in a bit of modern modern controversy. He steals a kiss for his efforts. If that makes you feel a certain way about him, you're entitled to your feelings, of course. The story is not over there, of course, because it turns out that Fats Horgan was not the actual villain. A man named Prince Ahmed Singh was aware that Diana Palmer was returning with this ambergris aboard her ship, and so he hatches a plan to kidnap her himself. Meanwhile, Diana has returned home where she runs into this character, Jimmy Wells. If you're familiar with the 1996 Billy Zane movie, this character does make an appearance. He's sort of the hapless friend of Diana that, you know, she meets when we first see her at her uncle's party. And then later again in the movie, he actually helps the Phantom track down one of the skulls of Tuganda. Here, though, as I said, Lee Falk was still designing the details and the backstory for the Phantom. So it's actually heavily implied here as Jimmy Wells is hearing Diana Palmer's story that Jimmy Wells is very obviously the Phantom. I think that maybe I'm looking back at this with a modern sensibility, but almost anybody could see that, that's exactly where it was headed towards. Diana tells Jimmy about her adventure where she went to a place called the Graveyard of the Whales and she found this ambergris. And as I said, ambergris is whale vomit, and so all these dead whales would have a load of very valuable, more valuable than gold deposits. Meanwhile, Prince Ahmed Singh has sent an assassin after Diana, but thankfully, she just so happened to stop talking to Jimmy Wells and the Phantom shows up, saving Diana Palmer from the assassin. Skipping ahead, Diana attends a socialite gathering where Prince Ahmed Singh springs his trap and kidnaps her. Jimmy Wells is wondering where Diana went, but he storms off in a huff, upset that apparently she left with Ahmed Singh, is the impression that he gets. This is the last time we see Jimmy Wells. Like it's very odd, because by this point, maybe not exactly by this point, but I think Lee Falk has started to pivot away from this idea that the Phantom is actually a New York socialite. But without getting into that, Diana wakes up in Prince Ahmed's clutches, only to be saved once again by the Phantom. He shows up again. How he knows where to go, is anybody's guess. If he were Jimmy Wells, I guess he would have assumed to follow Prince Ahmed Singh, knew that he was up to no good. But since we learn later that he's not Jimmy Wells, what the hell is happening? Maybe I guess he was following Diana the whole time. Although I might remember a panel in there somewhere that he was preoccupied with something else. Skipping ahead, Phantom escapes Ahmed Singh's compound with Diana. However, it turns out that he's going to need to go back because Diana's assistant, Dr. Owens, is still being held captive by Ahmed Singh. Or so Diana thinks, because actually it turns out that Dr. Owens had been working with Ahmed Singh the entire time. The Phantom, not aware of this, goes back to rescue Dr. Owens and is instead ambushed. And the Phantom is at the mercy of Ahmed Singh. Thankfully, though, Diana didn't simply escape to save herself, nor did she send police to Ahmed Singh's house. She actually draws the attention of the police by speeding and races back to Ahmed Singh's house just in time to run off Ahmed Singh as he realizes the police are approaching his property. Because Diana is not cooperating with the police, she's running ahead of them. Singh actually takes the moment to capture her and make off with her again. Meanwhile, the Phantom is saved. I guess yeah, Ahmed didn't want to take a moment to, just quickly pew pew. The Phantom gets loose. He hides from the police because this is an interesting aspect of this being an original 1936, superhero in a time where there weren't these masked types wearing superhero all over the place. He's he's a he looks like a criminal. He looks like a bandit. He's wearing a mask. He doesn't really get along with police, so he hides from them successfully, I might add. Discovers Dr. Owens and finds out that, oh man, Dr. Owens has been working with Ahmed Singh the whole time. But Dr. Owens isn't an evil man. He's just, he has his reasons. Maybe he's greedy, but I believe he had somewhat altruistic reasons for why he was helping. I don't really remember. The Phantom does make after Ahmed Singh, and in classic good guy pulp story fashion, he saves Diana Palmer. Does he steal a kiss again? I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. I don't know how many times he's gonna he's gonna be such a cad for taking a kiss from this woman whose life he saved multiple times. The Phantom tells Diana if he wants to know more about him, if she's so interested, to go find Dr. Dodd in the city. And Dr. Dodd is a historian, and this is officially where Lee Falk has pivoted completely away from the Jimmy Wells character as being the background for the Phantom to the Phantom being this mythological character throughout history, a 400-year-old character that first appeared in, at the time it was Southeast Asia, I think is where Bengala was located, later became Africa. If you saw the movie, it was more Southeast Asian. So she relays, or Dr. Dodd relays the whole legend of the Phantom as he knows it, as the public knows it. The Phantom is an immortal creature, an immortal man that has existed for 400 years, and he fights crime and injustice. The Singh Brotherhood are responsible for, you know, terrible acts of piracy all over the world, and the Phantom has been fighting them. And Diane has just been caught up in this because of the ambergris. Long story short, after Diana hears the story, the Phantom catches up with her and says, well, now so just got to let you know you can't go to the graveyard of the whales. You can't have that ambergris. And she says, well, I need it. And it turns out that really, really laying it on thick there was Lee Falk, Palmer Hospital for Crippled Children. The Phantom is moved by the fact that Diana's actually wants the ambergris from the graveyard of the whales for sick children. And so, he's sympathetic to her plight, but he knows that they still can't work together. They still can't be together as much as, he has this affection for her. But that doesn't stop Diana. She decides that she's going to go find Bengala. She's going to go track down the Phantom. She feels like she has this connection with him. Unfortunately for her, while she's on the trip to find the Phantom, the Singh Brotherhood has been hot on her heels. They steal her from the yacht that she was taking, and they bomb the yacht like the cowards they are, taking her to Krakatan, their underwater base, only enterable by a whirlpool. Diana is given the Princess Leia treatment, made to change into garbs. She's very, it's very humiliating. I don't mean to laugh about it, but this was the plight, unfortunately, of, pulp era females. And, it was intended to draw your emotions as a reader. You're not supposed to be, turned on by this. You're supposed to be like, oh, what a terrible person. How dare he humiliate this wonderful woman like this. This wonderful woman that's building a hospital for crippled children is what we've learned by now. But Kabe Singh, humiliates Diana and makes her don her slave Leia outfit. Meanwhile, the Singh Brotherhood had demanded taxes from the local tribes of Bengala, and the Phantom had actually caught up with one of the collectors. I'm not sure where the panel was back here. Oh, yeah, here it is. So he caught up with one of the collectors. So he found out about Krakatoa, the underwater base, and he's in the sea. Just happens to be looking for it at the same time that Diana is captured. Sneaks into the base. Rescue scene takes place. Very long rescue scene. Eventually, we find out that there's a woman named Sala working for Singh, and she's a specifically named character. She's quite a attractive vixen. There's definitely an aura of mystery about her, but we won't find out too much about her until a little bit later. Meanwhile, the Phantom does manage to escape Kabai Singh and Sala's clutches, and he saves Diana by shooting her to the surface from the submarine base in a hollow torpedo. And if you saw the movie, you might remember that scene as well. Unfortunately, there was nobody to shoot the Phantom in the torpedo, so he's dealing with this pressure change that causes great injury to his lungs and his internal organs, and he ends up getting separated from Diana, who is actually saved by a British colonial a British colonial ship manned by Captain Horton. This is Melville Horton, or Horton Melville. I don't remember which order his name takes place in. Meanwhile, the Phantom has washed ashore upon Lontok, is what this says, but I think this is meant to be Bengala, because as he's about to be eaten by a cheetah, he is saved by a wolf. But that's not just any wolf. That is his faithful wolf dog, Devil. As I mentioned before, things just sort of happen. And that's sort of classic pulp. That sort of classic pulp story is, why is Devil there? Did he smell his master being washed ashore? Not only do we meet Devil, the first animal companion, good boy, superhero pet. As far as I'm aware, I'm not sure. Somebody else can correct me if there was another dog companion that came before him. We also meet the Bandar, which are the protector tribe of the Phantom. They take care of the Phantom, they keep his secrets, and in this case, they're trying to save him. This is where Lee Falk delineates specifically the mysticism of his world. It's kind of ironic because Lee Falk was also known for Mandrake the Magician. Still a popular character, I would say, not so much as he was, but a character that was the prototype for characters like Zatanna, Constantine, all these magic-based superheroes. I would say Mandrake was the first one. But in the Phantom's continuity, in the Phantom's world, magic isn't real. It doesn't really exist, and when we see it, there's more than likely a rational explanation for it. So here we see Garan, which is I don't know if he's the chief of the Bandar at the time, but he's certainly the Phantom's best friend, and he's going to make probably the third or fourth most appearances over the next 90 years of any other character. And he's trying to save the Phantom through some witch doctor magic. The Phantom wakes up just enough to tell him to knock it off and find me a doctor. And, there's going to be some incendiary language here. I need a white man's magic. Bring me a white doctor, men of Bandar. We're talking about 1936. It is what it is. It just so happens that the doctor that the Bandar find is a man by the name of Melville Horton, who is the man who just recently rescued Diana. Horton is brought to the Skull Cave where he saves the Phantom from his life-threatening injuries. I know I just gave this soliloquy about mysticism in the Phantom's world, but even though the Phantom doesn't have superpowers, one of the sort of powers or abilities he does exhibit, which is somewhat inexplicable, is his ability to heal pretty quickly. And he doesn't have Wolverine healing abilities, but it's implied that he just gets back on his feet really quickly. Maybe his injuries aren't fully healed, but he can push through them, I guess, more than other people can. By this time, Diana has made Melville aware of why she's there, that she's looking for the Phantom. But Horton is also smitten with Diana, so it's a little bit of a love triangle. And unfortunately, the Phantom doesn't want to be uh, completely forthcoming about his feelings for Diana. In fact, he follows Melville back after Melville saves him, and he sees Melville and Diana kissing. He sees this, but he leaves before Diana says, "No, I didn't want to. I didn't want to kiss you, Melville. No, because Diana's in love with the Phantom, and the Phantom doesn't know this. The only thing the Phantom knows is that presumably Melville Horton and Diana are an item." Meanwhile, Melville is still a member of the British Colonial Services, and he's tasked with a mission to take down an uprising of a local tribe, the Neglami. And the Neglami are pretty vicious warriors. The Phantom hears about him going after the Neglami. He knows that this isn't going to be enough. He's going to get his ass kicked. And sure enough, Melville gets his ass kicked. He's tied to a stake. He's about to be eaten by a bunch of tribespeople. The Phantom actually intervenes along with the Bandar. It's actually pretty terrible. One of the Bandar kills one of the Neglami. This is really a little bit messed up, especially what we're going to learn about the Phantom and the politics of Bengala as time goes on. This would be extremely unusual. But the Phantom does elaborate that how unusual it is. He saves Horton and he tells him, like, hey, look, I wasn't gonna, I wouldn't do that. I normally wouldn't do that, but I know you're in love with Diana and Diana loves you and I love Diana and I want the best for her. So the Phantom saves Melville and sends him off with a chest full of treasure and ties a bandana around his eyes so he can't track him back to the Skull Cave. But Horton's not a cad. Horton wants to tell her, no, she loves you. Where'd you go? But the Phantom already left. The Phantom didn't hear. The Phantom doesn't know that Diana loves him. All the Phantom cares about is that Diana has the money she needs to find the graveyard of the whales so that she can build her crippled children's hospital and, live a great life with Melville Horton. Meanwhile, though, a Singh spy has seen this treasure and knows that she's going to launch her expedition and gets back to Kabai Sang and lets him know, she's headed for the graveyard of the whales. The Phantom, not content with just giving her a chest full of gold and sending her off with Melville, decides he's going to accompany her, unbeknownst to her, on her expedition. Diana goes on the expedition. She finds the graveyard of the whales. She finds some ambergris. Sure enough. But meanwhile, the Singh Brotherhood has tracked her mission in a submarine. And the Phantom, realizing this, steals the diving suit from Diana's ship, goes down there, sabotages the hell out of the submarine. It's actually pretty creative. He threatens the Singh Brotherhood by tapping Morse code on the hull of the submarine, and that's how he tells them to surrender. And otherwise, he's gonna, I believe, rip a hole open in his in the hull of the submarine. The Singh spies aboard Diana's ship are discovered, and the day is saved once again. And this now the sort of miscommunication that happened between Diana and the Phantom earlier is cleared up, and they have an opportunity to sit down and have a talk over some dinner. And the Phantom reveals his secret. He reveals the story of the first Phantom. In this first story, his name is Christopher Standish, but he would come to be known as Christopher Walker. All the Phantoms would be known as Christopher Walker at a certain point. Christopher Standish was a captain aboard a ship. He had his father along. That ship was attacked by the Singh Brotherhood, his father was killed. Christopher Standish washed ashore of Bengala. He was nursed back to health by the Bandar, and he swore to fight injustice and piracy and greed wherever it occurred, partially because he found the skull of the man that he believed killed his father. Um, I'm assuming the idea there being that since he could not have the revenge of killing this singular man, he would instead take out vengeance by fighting injustice and greed wherever it occurred. And of course, Diana is moved by the story. The Phantom is kind of at odds with having to tell her to this, but he realizes he loves her, um, but he has to let her go. She's got a hospital to build. He's got a jungle to rule, and he is considered a jungle king at this point in his career. That will be a more democratic process. But the two part ways, and the Phantom reveals to Melville Horton that he's discovered where the Singh Brotherhood's last base is. It's atop a mountain, and he orders Horton to take his forces there, but the Phantom is going ahead of alone because he knows that he's the only one that can make it past the impregnable defenses to, I suppose, sabotage them and clear the way for Horton. But it turns out the Phantom is less than successful. He's actually captured by the Singhs, thrown in jail, and this is where we learn a little bit more about Sala. Sala visits him while he's in the prison cell, and she expresses that, like, hey, you know what? I'm in love with you. I've always known the Phantom. I'm sorry. I've always known the Phantom's story. I've always been in love with the legend, and when I found out you were real, I realized that I loved you. But the Phantom's like, you know what? Um, I can't do it. I can't lie to you. I'm in love with somebody else. I appreciate it. You're hot, but and she's like, you come on, you fool, you fool, you refuse me. The Phantom turns Sala down, refuses to even lie to her, and we get his sort of reminiscing about that. He could have lied to her. Kind of, kind of regrets doing so. So the Phantom's about to be boiled alive in hot oil. What a way to go! But love knows no bounds. Sala decides that, she's gonna save the Phantom. She still loves him despite him refusing her. But of course, the Phantom and Sala are both in danger. So what's going to happen? Well, that's about the time that Melville Horton's airstrike comes in and bombs the Singh Brotherhood to holy hell. In a last-ditch effort, as Kabai Sang is trying to bring an end to the Phantom, Sala intervenes and Sala takes Kabai Sang out. As the two, Sala and the Phantom, are escaping the bombing, Sala is hit by some debris. She's hit by some fragments, injured, and she reveals that she's not actually a member of the Singh Brotherhood. She is a spy. She is a wing of the Sky Band. Well, what the hell's the Sky Band? Oh, well, no, she fainted. Phantom takes Sala into custody, and we are left wondering, what is the Sky Band? And that's where the story ends. That's the first Phantom story, the Singh Brotherhood. As you can see, the Singh Brotherhood was pretty much ended with this story. It's kind of a trend that would happen with the Phantom, is that most of the people that he fought in his individual stories, he would bring to justice, and they would not come back. Interestingly enough, the very next faction that we're going to see, the Sky Band, was a reoccurring villain is maybe a strong word. Or maybe it's an appropriate word, to be honest, given what they do. But they're going to be one of the only recurring foes that the Phantom has for a very, very, very long time. most of the Phantom's enemies, sort of stay down once he knocks them down. But anyway, we can get into the Skyband another time. Mad Cave actually has a new one shot coming out soon, The Phantom versus the Skyband, which is going to reintroduce that conflict in the modern era. So hopefully I can, make a video about the original Skyband story before that comes out so that people can have a frame of reference. Even if I don't, maybe I'll make it a little, soon after, and so that you can read the modern story first and then go back and listen to the older story. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was useful to you and informative to you. This isn't a story that's super easy to get your hands on, you know, in considerable ways. Certainly in print form, you have the option of the Hermes Press version, the hardcover that collects the first 3 stories, but that's about $100. This was less than 20, but I kind of got lucky that there was a US seller that was selling it in the first place. Most of the sellers out there are going to be Australian, and the shipping alone will likely be easily $20, let alone the price of the book. But if you can find it in this format, there's some other manners in which it's printed, mostly through Fruit Productions. But any way that you can get it, that's certainly up to you. Or you can check out archive.org, search for the Phantom newspaper dailies there. You might be able to read it in digital format. Thank you again. I don't know how this format really goes. This video is 30 minutes long. I really didn't expect it to be that, but it is a long story after all. Not all the Phantom stories are that long. I think the Skyband might be though. Like I said, hopefully it was useful to you. Hopefully you enjoyed my ranting about the Phantom's first story and a little bit of trivia as it went along, a little bit of commentary. And hopefully you'll tune in for the next one. I was Pirate Dave. See you again.